Session to order. First up, we got Mr. Dillard from Emergency Management going over our sublease agreement with Western.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I don't have a mouse. You're going to do this for me, right, sir? So this is a sublease agreement for a radio tower that Western Carolina has put up on Brown Mountain. I have a couple of videos here, where this is the tower. We will be in the building on the left-hand side, on the far side of that building. It's a 185-foot radio tower, and they have been gracious enough to let us sit on the very top of the tower. What we would be putting on that tower is a sheriff's repeater, a fire department or fire repeater, and a rescue repeater. So we'd be able to put 3 repeaters on there. So this next video kind of shows you where this is going to be at. You can see the bottom of the tower there on the right. So when it pans around, that's Glenville Lake. That's 107 coming down in the gorge. It's an excellent place for a radio site. I think it's really going to help us, especially on 107 in the gorge. We have a lot of trouble in there. We have a communications issue almost every day. And then that's Western Carolina University. So you can see it's in a really good spot to take care of both ends of the county. We could use it as our main repeater site if Cowee Mountain went down. So this lease is for 25 years. They're wanting to, the price for this lease is $10 a year. So it's a relatively good deal. So that's about $250.
Yeah.
So it's really a good deal. So if you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them for you about this lease.
Who is it that owns the tower?
Western Carolina
Oh,
University.
the university does.
Yes, that's their property, and they've been gracious enough to allow us to be on the same tower with them.
Any possibility you think we can get them to put a Verizon
That'll be up to them.
keeper up there?
Yes, that would be totally up to them. I don't know, but I think it's really going to enhance our communications in the area. And in the future, this would be used as a site roaming area. What that would entail is when those officers keyed a mic, it wouldn't matter which tower they were at, the radio would find the closest site. So I'm going to be pursuing that in probably the next year or so on that. You go up Cullowhee Mountain and then turn left on the West Cliff Road if you're going up Cullowhee Mountain. That's also the site of their FM station, 90. You remember, Nick, what their new site is? 93.3.
Is it a college radio station?
Yeah, but it's new. It's a new station. I think it's 93.3 or something.
It used to be 90.5.
It did used to, and they had to change it, and that's the reason they built this tower.
I see.
So
I think that's a great addition.
Yeah.
we look forward to it.
From what you have in your packets, what will be switched out is you do see Exhibit A and Exhibit B in your packets. Those are in Exhibit C. Those will be, I believe, A and C. Is that correct?
Yes.
A and C will be, you can see it's just a better photo, clearer photo, doesn't have a magic marker circled on it. And then Exhibit C is just making sure the correct equipment and space is identified of what's being leased. And so
On Exhibit C in the package you have, it shows that we would erect a 40-foot tower. That came from another site. We're not erecting any new towers. That's how it would look right there.
Then they got a lightning
Oh,
rod
yes.
on there?
Oh, yes. Yes, sir. It's a well-built area. It really is.
It's a win-win.
It is a win-win. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
And we do appreciate WCU doing this, but this was also part of when they came through the permitting process.
Yes, sir.
That was part of the discussion with the board at the time to ensure that we were able to get on with emergency services communications.
Do you know if the highway patrol Viper system is any part of that?
It is not. They did a study and said that that tower would not be conducive for what they needed to do. I don't know. I mean, they have a tower on the airport and you're looking down at the airport. So,
That's what I asked.
yes, they tried.
Any additional questions from the board? I think there's consensus to put this on the next meeting's agenda. Get forward with it.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Have a good day.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Breedlove with the Tourism Capital Project request.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I apologize in advance. We've got a tourism conference next week, so I won't be able to attend your full board meeting. But I'm here today to present our first capital projects we're proposing to the Board of Commissioners. And as a reminder, our legislation dating back to 2012 talked about capital projects, but this is a relatively new program. We're really excited to get it launched, and we've had two applications submitted for this cycle. And just a reminder, these do not come from any property taxes, any real taxes. They're all from tourism-generated dollars. The two projects in front of you are from the town of Silva and Dillsboro, and they are very thorough in nature. So I did my best to get them down to a few pages for you. But the original packets are around 50 pages. So if you've got any questions, I've got those in front of me as well. And our legislation allows us to spend 1/3 of our tax revenues on these capital projects with the approval of the Board of Commissioners. So first, if it's okay with the board, I'll speak to the project that the town of Silva is proposing. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with Bridge Park. I remember when that was built in 2008, and it's really become a focal spot for downtown Silva and Jackson County. As you know, they do free Friday night concerts there. The farmers market's also held there, and numerous events from July 4th to festivals, and just throughout the year that park is constantly utilized. The total project cost it's about $785,000, and the town of Silva is putting in around $418,000, and they're requesting from the TDA for funding through our capital project fund roughly $367,000. This project will create a really nice event venue, but also allow for Silva's first public fishing spot on Scotts Creek. Some people call it Scott Creek, but same name there. It's right there at Bridge Park. You'll see, Don, if you could please go to page 2. There we go. You've got a really nice view of Equinox has put together a great plan for how this project would look. You'll have a lot better bioretention, which means less runoff going from the parking area into the river. It's going to also improve the waterway there and clean up that waterway. They'll have accessible parking, an area for food trucks, an entry arch. It's really going to be a nice area for families to come down. There'll be picnic tables so people can buy lunch downtown or bring a picnic lunch and sit there and just enjoy the riverbank there. So this plan has been put together since, I believe, 2018. This plan was put together, and the town of Silva has the funds now. We have the funds available to make this happen. And the proposed completion date is next year in April. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on this project.
The schematic layout by Equinox, I don't see the ADA fishing spot accessible.
So the fishing spot, I believe Mr. Adams has his mouse pointer on it. If you can see that, it looks, it's at the north part of the parking lot. It's that brown colored spot. It's a viewing platform.
So it has two uses, viewing platform or?
And fishing, yes, sir.
Oh, I see, okay.
ADA parking spaces identified on see those.
I don't believe in that schematic, but I've got their entire schematic.
Maybe next to the yellow
Yeah.
circular area because of the wide spacing between them.
They do have them identified in the full plan. It's just not labeled in that diagram.
Say one thing, having parked in the gravel lot to make your way over to the pavilion, it's gonna be a huge improvement just having a pathway.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I mean, for accessibility.
for
It will.
wheelchairs especially, yeah.
And accessibility is it's an issue that we're studying closely. Over a quarter of the Southeast has some sort of mobility or accessibility needs. So that's something that the town of Silva worked really well on with this plan.
So Town of Silva's contribution is 418,000.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is there a ratio of ADA spaces versus that we have to comply with? I mean, I'm assuming it meets it, but
I believe
two seems rather shallow.
I'll check with the town of Silva and update you, Commissioner. But I believe Equinox would have studied
I don't think so, but
the requirements. Yes,
2
sir.
out of 57 seems a little light. But
Those 57 new additional parking spaces or just
57 total.
total in the project, in addition to what the town already has?
I don't believe those are in addition. So if you look at the site as it shows now on the screen, it would be essentially striping or paving that gravel lot that exists now. Yes, sir. And their plan gets so specific on even the types of plants and species that are going into that area. So they've put together a really thoughtful plan that it's really going to be a centerpiece for downtown Silva.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
And the next request, attachment 2C, that came from the town of Dillsboro. They would like to connect, as you recall, when the bridge replacement was going into the town of Dillsboro, they diverted traffic onto a temporary bridge. And they also set up a traffic detour. Mr. Adams, if you could go to slide number 4, I think that's the best illustration. So that temporary detour you'll see circled in pink right there. The DOT put up a bridge there that was temporary in nature to divert traffic when the bridge project was going on. And the DOT took that temporary bridge away after the project was completed with the main bridge into Dillsboro. So essentially this project would add a bridge back there and walking paths along that bridge for pedestrian access. The town of Silva's requested $449,000 from the TDA for that. It was the board's opinion that this is a worthwhile project, but they've asked us to fund almost 70% of that project. And we, the board, came in at the amount of $125,000, which is more than the town of Dillsboro or the directed grant from the NC General Assembly recommended. So we did think this is a worthwhile project, but we did reduce the amount requested in the view that while it's a valuable walking path, that may not necessarily generate additional business or revenue coming into Dillsboro. Given that there's already sidewalks connecting Silva and Dillsboro, this was a project that, yes, we are heavily for greenways. We are about getting people moving around festivals and events easier. But at that park, presently, there aren't that many events that take place. There's the airing of the quilts and a few others, but realizing that there are future projects coming down the pipe that will likely be asked to contribute to financially. I know the Dillsboro River Park is one of those that's often come up in conversation. We felt the level of 125,000 was appropriate, contingent on them securing the remainder of the funds for the project.
That's just a pedestrian bridge, correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
So let me ask you, so right now they have 200, is that what I'm seeing here?
They have 200, yes, sir.
And then you made that 325, but that doesn't really quite cover the bridge, does it?
It falls short of covering the cost of the bridge. Dillsboro does have a fund balance that's above and beyond the 8% required. So if this is a priority for the town, I did talk with them and let them know that if they wanted to proceed with this project, they may wish to tap into their fund balance for the remainder. Yes, sir.
On the diagram with the circle on it, where the bridge used to be, what happened to what actually happened to the bridge?
So that is a temporary bridge that the DOT installed as a detour.
Yeah.
So in the lower portion, it doesn't quite show the bridge that goes into Dillsboro, but when they were replacing that main bridge along, I'm not sure if that's Haywood Road yet, but the main bridge into Dillsboro, they had to divert traffic to that temporary bridge where the pink circle is.
That was part of the deal, Tom, that ultimately, when they first started this project, they were gonna shut down. They literally, we were concerned about how long they would shut it down, divert traffic. And the contractor and DOT, I believe, came up with, this may have been the contractor's concept, come up with an idea that if they could divert traffic, ultimately, it saved Dillsboro, saved DOT, saved a lot of money doing that. And so it's never intended for that bridge to be permanent, and that deal that was struck that saved everybody a lot of money. And then also allowed for some traffic to continue, and then allowed for the contractor to work. They got that bridge done extremely, a lot faster timeline because of the deal that struck. And I think the deal
But I
that
mean,
struck,
it was connected at one time, right?
well, they connected it temporarily, yes.
So why did they tear it down
Well,
and open it up?
it was one of the, have you seen those, like a folding structure bridge that they put in temporarily for emergencies like that? And
That's
they
how
just
So it
hauled
was-
it out.
I got
It
you.
was their asset, okay?
Yeah.
Didn't the town of Dillsboro receive $350,000 as part of that negotiation?
They did. It was a sum somewhere in that ballpark. Yes, sir.
I think the original plan was for them to build a whole new bridge there and then tear the old one down. And they come up with this to save a lot of money.
And time,
So-
too, yeah.
I met with the mayor and the clerk down there at that site. It's been a couple months ago, and they were really hoping to get the project done. They expressed to me, to me, it seemed like it was very important to them. I'd really like to see more money given to them, but
When we,
I mean, I know they don't have a lot of events down there right now, but they don't have, they have bathrooms up on the top. They're wanting to move the bathrooms down. I mean, I agree with the bridges. That can come later on. I agree with you about, the sidewalks that connect all the way from Dillsboro to Silva. But I'd like to see a little bit more put into that project.
One would think that 350,000 or whatever that amount was that Dillsboro received would have kind of been planned to go back to replacing that temporary bridge that they knowing would come out.
And I can't remember my whole conversations with them, but they have a big detailed plan of what they're wanting to do down there, and it's a great plan. I feel like it'd be great for not only Dillsboro but for the county. Well, like I say, I'd like to see a little bit more go towards it.
yes, sir. In the board discussion, we talked about, these are tourism dollars that go to projects that hopefully bring in more visitors to spend money at small businesses and support them. And we talked about that and putting in a bridge there that the application primarily talks about it as a walking route. Trying to justify people utilizing that for walking and the potential economic impact of that. There there's multiple studies about how greenways help the economy and generate revenue, but in terms of tourism draw, when we compare the impact of that bridge to, say, a Dillsboro Whitewater Park, for example, it's significantly disproportional. We all love the project on our board. It was just in terms of priorities.
You're not gonna see any small businesses within this small corridor that are gonna, I guess, offset the cost of all the improvements and.
That 125,000, what is a nice gesture toward this project. And when Mr. Breedlove refers to tourism dollars, it's generated by the occupancy tax, that 4% currently that goes off of a hotel room, not by taxpayers itself, Jackson citizens.
So our request to commissioners would be to approve the 125,000 contingent upon Dillsboro securing the rest for the project. I did talk with the clerk and the mayor, and we let them know that, you know, should they this year decide to just purchase the bridge and then a future year do the remainder of the work, that they could submit a change to their project that we could review. And, you know, I feel like they would be close to being able to purchase the bridge this year if they decided to.
As traffic increases, then do your restroom facilities and.
And they do have restrooms on the site. They just wanted them, I believe, moved to a lower location so they'd be more accessible.
Now, they talked about getting with the DOT to replace that bridge, making it like a one lane bridge, but I don't know. So what they're requesting is a walking bridge, that's correct, right?
Let me refer back to that application one moment so I don't misspeak. It involves the installation of a prefabricated bridge, but it doesn't state whether it's vehicular or just for
Sure, it's
walking.
like the ones out towards Western is the pedestrian bridge for that kind of money anyway.
What they talked to me, it was different conversations, anyway.
So these are the two projects we have before the commissioners at this time. I will let you know that during Leadership Cashers, which is similar to the Citizens Academy, but in the Cashers region, we talked about the Tourism Capital Project Fund, and many of the people in Cashers were not aware of that. So I do think we'll see additional applications from the Cashers area in future cycles.
Well, I feel comfortable moving forward with these two projects. Is that the consensus with the board? Okay. We'll go ahead and move to have these on the agenda for next week.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. All right, moving on now to Mr. Parker with Public Works and the summary of the solid waste bids. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Board.
Been waiting on this one.
All right. You should have before you the results of our solid waste bids that we put out for all our different contracts that we have. And I just wanted to go through those with y'all so we could take a look at that and then ultimately request to be able to look at with each contractor as far as going forward with the contract. So I think the first page you have is the results from the landfill bid, which is, we had two bids here. tipping fees in Homer, Georgia from the waste management landfill, and tipping fees from White Oak landfill in Haywood County, North Carolina, and that's a Republican landfill. So I'll refer to those to Republican Waste Management going forward. But, so the Republic bid was $35 a ton. Waste Management's bid was $28.81 per ton. And then there's a combination. I'll go over this a little bit more at the end, but there's a combination reduction price that's reduced if we go with Republic with all their services, and that tipping fee is $33.95 per ton. And if you look down below, based on the $28.81 and the $35 per ton, Waste Management's tipping fee obviously is a cheaper amount. This is based on like 35,000 tons a year. We do somewhere around that every year. I think this year the numbers are looking at like 36,000 instead of 35, but so that's why it's kind of approximate cost. With White Oak being the Waste Management would be a little over 1,008,350. The Republic would be 1,225,000, and then with the discount, Republic would be 1,188,250. So the savings with the discount would be around 36,750. And if you look below that, our current cost at the Waste Management landfill is $27.51 per ton, and that comes out to around $962,850. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about the tipping fees at this point.
And I just want to clarify for folks who may watch this on YouTube, this is our general waste that's hauled out of our transfer station. So this is your general garbage waste. It's not your recycling waste. It's not your wood waste. It's not your scrap metal waste. It's our general garbage waste. Currently, we do take it to Homer, Georgia, is where we currently haul. And we did have another landfill ran by Republic out of Haywood County that also submitted a bid. And so also just want to make sure what we do at the end of this is we combine everything, because obviously, even though it looks like that Homer, Georgia would be the selected landfill, but just remember our transportation costs will significantly reduce when we take a look at going to Haywood County. So we'll take a look at all of that in the next pages, but just wanted to make sure everybody understood that this particular section of our discussions is our general waste that's hauled down to Homer, and we're contemplating whether or not we go to Haywood County.
So with that being said, the next page is regarding hauling to the landfill and the recycling facility. We had one bid here, and it's Kinsland Trucking, who is our current provider. They the cost to haul to the Waste Management landfill in Homer is $720 per load, and that comes up to $1,224,000. To haul to the White Oak landfill in Haywood County per load, that price was $500 per load. That's $850,000. So you can see where it kind of changes a little bit here for us as far as when we add these together at the end. And then the last column is the haul to the materials recovery facility, which we use Curbside Management in Asheville, and that's who we will continue to use. And that price is $660 per load. That's $138,600. So those prices actually did not change as far as what we're paying right now, except for the Republic White Oak price that we received.
And Kinsland was the only one that put the bid in for the trucking part of it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But in doing that, we did require them to bid on the White Oak landfill as well in the package. So that's the additional thing that we've kind of gained out of this bid project. And like I said, we'll go over the combination and some savings at the end if we lump some of these things together. But the next page is the SRC equipment lease, hauling, and staffing. We just had the one bid here as well, Republic. And the pricing for the hauling, which is hauling all these materials collected at our SRC sites to the transfer station. That's a monthly cost of $55,756, and you can see right below it if we take the combination price to take White Oak and their hauling bid, the 5483.32 is what it would be per month. And then you can also see below that what the approximate yearly expenditures would be: $669.72 and $648,999.84, which, again, showing you the savings of going with Republic for all the landfill and everything involved in there. You could save $20,072.16. Equipment lease is the same thing beside there, $8,402.74, and then with the price reduction would be $8,150.66. The yearly amount $100,832.88, and then $97,807.92 with the discounts. And again, savings $3,024.96. The site staffing is again $50,464 per month, $48,950 with the savings. Yearly cost $353,248, $342,650.56 with the discount. Savings of $10,597.44. And then the staffing, that was summertime staffing. The rates change in the winter versus summer because we take an hour off. I don't know if you know, but our SRC sites in the summer months are 7 to 7, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. In the wintertime, they're 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. So that hour difference causes what they charge here is $53,416 and $51,813.52.
Why is the shorter winter hours more expensive than the longer summer hours?
I'm gonna have to go back and check that just to make sure. But let me look right here.
Winter weeks. Winter weeks. Versus the summer.
It's November to March.
Yeah, it's April to October is the summer hours, and November to March is the. They must have put those backwards on the
That's what I was thinking.
bid,
Yeah, they got them reversed.
because
The summer should be 53 and the winter should be 50.
I think what happened there is I had the summer. They were supposed to list the summer months first, and they listed the winter months first. So I need to go back and double check that. Sorry about that. I'll need to check that. But, the winter months should be the lesser amount. So I'm going to have to, like I said, I'll have to bring that back to you and show you. But there will be some savings there on that as well. So if you want to go to the back page, these numbers obviously will change a little bit then, since that's the case. But if you look at the back page, the biggest savings here as far as any of these bids is going to be the savings between hauling to White Oak to the Republic landfill versus the Homer Waste Management landfill. If you see the approximate yearly expenditure for Homer, would be, when you combine the hauling and the tipping fee, is $2,232,350, And then the hauling combined to the White Oak Republic landfill is $2,038,250. And then if you go over to that's the yearly amounts. If you go to the far right, that amount is the 5-year, which is what we would look for a contract for. And that's the amounts of the expenditures there. So if you go down below that, savings for White Oak, for the landfill and hauling for Republic. And again, these numbers will change a little bit. The yearly, it would be $194,100. And then for 5 years, that would be $970,500. That would not change. That number would be $970,500 over the 5-year period. The number below, the SRC hauling discount, would maybe go to a little bit different. So there's quite a bit of savings in going with the White Oak landfill rather than the Homer, Georgia landfill. And then if you wanted to know current cost, you can see what those are to compare below for what our tipping fee is now at Homer versus our hauling costs and how much that would be. And then we kind of put down at the bottom there, it would be about a $743,000 savings over what we're paying right now over the next 5 years.
Chairman, if I may, Mr. Parker, this might be a Ms. Fox question. Maybe Mr. Adams can answer it. If the enterprise fund, if we have a 5-year net cash of almost $1 million, can that be utilized anywhere in the county, or does that have to stay in the enterprise?
It has to stay in the enterprise fund, sir.
Okay.
And that, I put more solid thought into the annual. We do have to deal with CPI annually. If you take these 5-year contracts, just a reminder, we gave you a copy of the request for proposals. Within that proposal, we'd already established the base contract. We already established certain things. So within that base contract, it allows for CPI increases and things of that nature. So I just say that because this is what when I go back to what we're saving now, I would be comfortable with the 148 in the next year after you award the contract. But what I can't predict is what the CPI is going to be 5 years. That's assuming everything stayed level for 5 years. And so the reality is I guess what I'm trying to tell you is that as far as saving actual cash that increases cash into that account, that's really dictated by the cost 3 years from now and CPI 3 years from now. Like I say, that's where I go back being more comfortable saying, well, this first year we absolutely should see the 150 savings from what we're spending now, but future years are dictated by CPI. And then any savings there would have to stay within that account.
And all of our equipment is leased. The county doesn't own any of the containers or.
We do own a few boxes that we've gained through grants over the years, recycling boxes, some of the paper and the bottles and cans. Like I think the open tops that we got through grants. So if you go to a site, it's an open top container and you're throwing in your bottles and cans. I think we own those. We own some of the sliding door cardboard fiber boxes. So there's a few of those that we own outright. But those
Equipment replacement would be minimal.
That's the SRC sites. That's not the transfer station. Now talk about what we own at the transfer station.
we don't own anything at the transfer station. No,
Lease it and-
we have a truck that moves the trailers around at the
What about
transfer station.
loaders and
Those
everything?
are all owned by Republic, right?
The trailers at the
The staff recycling center?
everything at the staffed recycling centers except for what we own is owned by Republic. At the transfer station, the only thing we own is like a yard truck that pulls the trailers around. The trailers are owned by Kinsler Trucking.
But it's sounding as if though we don't have equipment cost out there. We do, okay. When you're renewing these leases for these loaders and things, where are we at right now?
Oh, I see what you're saying now. I get what you're saying. Yes, we have 3 wheel loaders up there. We have machine that packs the garbage in. If you've been up there, you've seen that. It's like a crane type thing. We do have some equipment on site that we use.
High dollar equipment that we do have to either lease it or replace it. We had one on a loan for a little bit. I mention all that because yes, the lease equipment for the Republic SRC site, that's included for 5 years, but I just didn't want you to be surprised in 3 years if we're talking to you about a loader replacement or things of that nature, which is fairly high dollar equipment.
So it looks like with the current bids, it would be unwise to say we could get another SRC site. Just on cost and savings, because each site is going to roughly cost $300,000 to set up and man, and the savings are only $150,000.
And then also the cost of actually building out the site.
Right.
Acquisition.
So you would have to take a
Property and-
serious look at the rates in order to do that. Yes, sir. The value of this process is obviously trying to make sure that we allow for competition and so forth. I do think, obviously Republic coming available in Haywood is what's allowed us to either have some savings, or another way to look at it is mitigate our cost in the next 5 years. Because we're always going to deal with fuel cost increases and things of that nature. So I do think we've got a really good value of going through this bidding process and going through this process, even though we only had single bids for certain services. The real value was that Haywood County came open, and that allowed for our transportation costs to significantly decrease, which allows for these savings.
Does this lock in our tipping fee for these 5 years? Or is that a product of CPI as well?
It would be CPI as well.
So it could go up a little bit.
Yes, I think in the contract it was maxed out at 4, or the bid documents.
Only go so high.
It's only 4. Yeah, the max is 4%.
That's normal.
And the only other thing, just to note for everybody, when you're looking at our actual cost, I do want to note that you see this does not include the $2 a ton tipping fee. Would you say you base this on 35,000 tons? Is that what you-
Yes, yes, sir.
So if you're trying to look at this and see what our actual costs are, you need to add $70,000 to all these numbers. I'm talking about to the tonnage numbers here, because that is just an additional fee assessed by state of North Carolina. The reason we took it out of there is because sometimes landfills, like North Carolina landfills, will make it part of their tipping fee, right? And then sometimes, like Homer did not, because Homer, they don't have anything to do with North Carolina, so we separate that $2 out. So we just separated that out on both of these bids just so that there was no confusion. But either way, we would pay that $2 a ton.
Yeah, that would be like, if Haywood County is the North Carolina landfill, they will collect that $2 fee. They'll pay it to the state. The way we do it now is, like you said, Waste Management, since they're in Georgia, they do for their landfills in North Carolina, but in Georgia, they do not collect that $2. So we collect it, and then finance sends in that payment each quarter. So if we did go with Haywood County, finance wouldn't have to do that anymore. We would just pay it to Haywood, and then they would pay it to the state. Any questions? I did go back and look, and that's what happened on the summer and winter. Those got switched. So I apologize for that.
Could happen to anybody.
Yeah. Is everyone on consensus that this is a great plan and it should be moving forward?
Saving taxpayers' dollars.
Yep. It's a big win.
We're here for it.
That's right.
Timeline on that is we will follow through, and our goal would be in the month of August, 1st of September. There is one other item missing from here, and that is our tire disposal contract. To let you know, that does require a tipping fee. There's really only one place right now that we can take our tires in the state of North Carolina. And so we're wanting to take that bid and try to go and work on some other transportation alternatives. So to try to maybe save some money before we bring it back to you. So we'll bring that back to you in August when we talk about bringing these other contracts back to you. Our goal is to have everything executed by the end of August, early September. And remember, this comes effective at the beginning of the, is it December or January?
January 1, so we
Calendar year. So remember, we tried to do this bid so early so that if there was somebody else who wished to either do the SRC sites and or the transportation, it would allow them time to go purchase the equipment. So,
Chad, do we make money off the recycled tires?
No, sir. That no,
did
we
not
have to
know.
pay, and we'll talk about that in August because that price is increasing because of just the nature of how many people are in that business. And
You have a whole lot of people that's just bringing tires to the SRCs or.
no, the tire.
The businesses collect them when they
Yeah,
change the tires.
Exactly. Tires.
Correct. The tires, what happens is the business collects those, and then we have trailers at our transfer station, and those get put in those trailers, and then they're hauled off. But we do have to
But
pay
the
for
businesses are not recycling them themselves.
No, that contract covers all the businesses in the county, and that's another thing that we'll talk about in August. So just want to make sure everybody understands how all that works. And
Yeah, because I know now they're recycling old tires and grinding them up and using them for football fields like they just did with Western. Turn them into little beads.
they
I figured they were paying us for a little something for the rubber.
no the tires. From what I was told in the past, it's about 1% of the tires get recycled. A whole tire is banned from landfills in North Carolina, but if it's shredded, the rubber can be landfilled, but the whole tire itself cannot be.
so the two areas we'll talk about, and we'll have a lot more details when we bring it back to you. There's literally, in the state of North Carolina, we're only allowed to take the tires to a certified sites. I mean,
Yes, they're permitted by the state of North Carolina, the tire facilities. Yes.
there's literally one that's within driving is in Concord.
Yes.
So there's that cost of disposal and transportation is somewhat set, but we have additional services in this county that we work with people who install tires, and so we have additional services that either sets trailers or we go pick them up, and these are services that we're trying to explore to see whether or not we can find alternative ways to provide the service that's a little bit cheaper. Currently, right now, we got a bid from a company that's from Concord that's having to come here to do the service, and we feel like we might can find somebody here locally that can maybe provide that service a little bit cheaper. So we just want to explore that. Concord, I don't think they really care.
They don't care. I mean, they're in the tire business. Their facility, their permitted facility is what they kind of
But they-
deal with. As far as picking tires up and hauling them, I don't think they necessarily want to be in the hauling business, but they have been for us for several years. But if there's somebody else locally that we could get maybe that would haul the tires possibly cheaper, that's what we need to talk about.
That's what we want to explore that before we bring the bids here. Yeah.
A little off subject, but I haven't bought a set of tires in a while, but is there a fee that tire dealerships charge you?
Yep.
Yes.
Sure do.
So we as customers get a fee, pay a fee, and then the county has to pay a fee also?
What happens there is that that's a state tax that's put on those tires when you buy those tires. That facility that sells you those tires takes that state tax. They have to pay it in to Raleigh, and they redistribute that back to the counties, and then we take that money and we pay for our tire program. Now there's also cost overrun grants for those tire programs, but we are the cost of the disposal of the tires typically for us has been around $10,000 to $12,000 more than what we get from that tax and those cost overruns. So we are actually paying some out of pocket to do as far as county dollars. So the same thing happens with computers and white goods, which are your metal appliances and everything. So the tax gets paid on that. That consumer sends it to Raleigh. It gets redistributed, to the counties based on, I guess, sales. Maybe I think it is how many sales go through. So you are correct that you do pay that.
We can reduce our transportation costs, and this transportation cost that we're talking about is relatively new. It's an additional transportation cost that we're trying to mitigate. Does that $12,000 include that additional cost?
No, I'm talking about current.
All right, and
Yeah.
so,
That's an additional 60.
so it was about another $40,000 on top of that there, or maybe more, that we're trying to mitigate and trying to figure out if there's a better way to accomplish the same service a little bit cheaper and then get it closer to break it even as best we can.
Because we don't really have an option on the tire facility, the permitted tire facility. That's kind of set for us. I guess to give you an idea, the tonnage cost on tires right now that we're paying is like almost $127 a ton. So, and then there's freight on top of that. So, just to give you an idea, a tractor trailer of tires probably around $4,000 to $5,000 to dispose of those. And we don't have as many tires as we do solid waste, so it's not as the money amount is not as great, but it's still quite a bit of money for tires.
It's great. I guess when everything is prepared, we'll have this maybe 1st of August,
Yes, sir. And sometime in probably mid-month August. Yes,
mid-month
sir.
August.
Yes.
Great. I think we're all in consensus. Saving money's good. Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Thank y'all.
I will say, because the main vendors are remaining the same, the SRCs and the transporter, the mid-August, 1st of September, it's the companies already have their equipment. So the reality is there's not a rush, whereas if there was a new company, they would need the contract signed so that they can get their equipment ordered. So that gives us time to make sure we get everything, the paperwork put together correctly.
Moving on now to other business and North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Annual Conference, Jackson County Voting Delegates.
Nothing to be decided today, just letting the board know that we do have you do have the Association of County Commissioners Annual Conference, August 24th through the 26th. If anybody's interested in attending, please contact Ms. Winchester, your clerk, and she'll help you get registered. And then behind that is ultimately, you can see that they are looking to have, if we do have someone attend, to be the voting delegate. And let's see if there's a timeline on here when they would ask for you for that voting. Please submit your voting delegate designations by Monday, August 21st. So we've got through our meetings through August for you all to decide if you wish to attend and who the voting delegate should be. Just trying to get that on your radar.
Then permitting software.
Sure. So again, this is one of these things where trying to get this information, this is not a new conversation for the board, but to get the actual proposed contract in front of the board. This is something that was presented to you as a board at budget session. And ultimately it was passed and approved in the budget amounts. The amount in this proposed contract has been verified as the amount that was discussed and also approved in the budget process. Also, we are having legal go through and look at this. This was a contract that was approved and worked on by our former county attorney, Heather Baker. And so I've asked Mr. Scott here, our interim county attorney organization, to review Heather's review and then make sure that what's in front of you matches our former review by our former county attorney. There are a couple items that will be changed before it gets brought back to you that Mr. Scott did pick up that did not get changed in this document. Mr. Scott, I don't know if you want to just point those out. I believe it was page 9.
Yeah, I have that in my email to you. Give me just a moment. I can pull that out. page 9, section F, term 1. So we go up a little bit. So term, there was a few changes in that as far as what happens upon expiration of the initial term that Heather included and I agree needs to be changed. And then page 11, section G6, discussing insurance. Heather really wanted to push for cyber insurance. With this being an IT contract, I cannot agree more. In today's cybersecurity incidents from the state.
Otherwise, we are comfortable to move forward. Those are the two areas that we are discussing with the firm right now to make those changes. I literally, that's the point of the work session, is for us to get this in front of you and then talk about what has to be changed. Other than those two sections, everything in this proposed agreement matches to what was presented to the board and what was approved in the budget process.
Substance abuse coordinator and jail MAT coordinator position.
So everybody, no questions about the software contract. Let me ask this board, if I bring it back to you, do you all want this entire, I'll put it online, the final version. I'll be happy to give you a full final copy of it. Just let me know. It's a fairly large contract and
Yeah.
you have it here. And so, I'll be happy to print it out for you again. But if not, then we'll leave it online and then that's something you can.
Yeah.
As long as it's within the same cost.
Right.
Look at it again.
We'll get it scanned in. If the board's comfortable with that. Normally, we have the contracts in front of you, but this one's a few pages, a bit longer than the normal. Yes, sir. So, as everybody's aware, Jackson County did receive a Dogwood grant for a substance abuse recovery coordinator position, and the sheriff did receive a North Carolina Department of Public Safety grant for a jail-based substance abuse coordinator. And so what we were not able to do is to get it into the budget documents that you just passed. So what I am asking the board to do is to approve these two positions. We do, again, we have, the grant's been approved, we are receiving the funds. And so in order for us to move forward with the actual advertisement of the position and eventual placement, just asking that you approve the substance abuse recovery coordinator position. You can see that is the department administration, reports directly to the county manager. It's a pay grade 25. You can see that this position is a 24-month position with benefits, but it's temporary. It coordinates the process of creating an overall master plan regarding Jackson County's allocation of opioid settlement dollars. And then you can see the essential job functions there. And ultimately what that's doing is what we've discussed multiple times before, creating the master plan and also trying to coordinate services. And this position is also to work directly with the jail-based position itself. If you go to the next page, you'll notice, well, it didn't copy. I apologize. Next page, I did have draft on there. The sheriff's jail-based substance abuse coordinator. I'm still waiting on feedback from the sheriff. But ultimately, you can see this is a position, a pay grade 24. It provides coordination of substance abuse recovery program services while the participant is incarcerated and also when the participant is released. You see the essential job functions. I just pulled those basically straight out of the grant itself. Of course, it does have the last bullet point on both of these. Any other duties as assigned by sheriff and or the first page for the county direct position, any other duties assigned by the county manager. And then you can see the qualifications there at the bottom. And again, I am waiting for feedback from the sheriff in regards to just how he would like that changed. And I'll have that in hand before next Tuesday.
As far as additional other business, did we want to discuss? 'Cause, 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 'cause what we had a private discussion about earlier?
Yes, sir. So there are several things. So yes, sir. Just want to, in general terms, I believe everybody's been receiving emails. When I mean everybody, I mean all county commissioners, town commissioners, in regard from Representative Clampett in regards to a potential facility that would house mental health patients. And so there has been a request from the county and also from the town of Silva to provide some response as far as would there be an acceptance or would there be something from Jackson County where we would like to see a facility. And we're talking about a facility that would house adult mental health patients. And so right now, Mr. Representative Clampett and our legislators are trying to work on funding the build out of one of these facilities in our region because there are lack of beds in our region. And so ultimately, Chairman Letson mentioned it, that the last email that I'd received, it was literally from Representative Clampett, and what he was offering to do was to basically come and present this concept to multiple elected leaders, not just this board, but to town commissioners, and also bring the provider that I believe he must be working with to try to run this facility. I do not have more details than what I just described to you. At the end of the day, I do believe that he's just offering to continue these conversations about the potential location of this facility. The reality is the need is there for the beds, but this becomes a discussion, a community discussion, when you start talking about a regional facility. And there's pros and cons to these types of discussions. And Mr. Chairman, some of you may have read the email, some of you haven't. But my view is we have a representative, Representative Clampett, who's offered to do this. I just saw an email that I'm not directly receiving these emails. I know you all are receiving them, and then Ms. Winchester forwards them to me when she gets them. And my understanding is Representative Clampett has gotten some response from the town's mayor about being receptive to just listening and maybe setting up a venue for him to come and present. And I just thought instead of it being a individual commissioner response, is there something this board would like to do as a board? I'm just throwing it out for discussion.
I think we owe it to Mike to continue the conversation. I don't know if it's something that I need a lot more information before I can just, on a blanket, let's fill it out and see what happens. I know there's a lot of opposition to it, but I think we need to follow the process and at least hear it out.
And if that's
it may be that another entity wants it in their region, something that's more centralized to district wide, I guess, for him.
Because in general, I think I'm not really clear as to what, like if a private facility wished to locate here in Jackson County, then ultimately they would go find property, they'd look to buy it, they'd have to build it within the zoning regulations, they'd have to build it within all building regulations. And so, but having said that, I do believe what does make this a little bit different is if our elected representative is actually trying to get state funds allocated for it, then ultimately I suppose what he's looking for to see if there's local elected officials that are in support or not in support of that. And so that, and again, I'm with you, Chairman Letson. That's as much as we know now at this point in regards to what's being potentially offered or not offered. And so the reason I brought it to you is because it's just, I believe he's offering to come and participate in some venue here to maybe explain a little bit more what the concepts are.
I've not received anything from Mr. Clinton, the only thing that I've heard. Commissioner Smith, and that's it. I don't know if he's messed my email address up or what, but yeah.
So what's interesting about this is so again, I'm getting these emails and I'm sure we'll get a public information request after this discussion. So everything, I do remind everybody, we do need to be cautious about exchanging, like replying all to these emails in regards to if 3 or more of you start replying all and discussing this, then it becomes a potential open meetings discussion. And so I do see some replies that were direct, not as a reply all. And so if the board wishes to participate in a program, then I think I'm going to offer this up, is that work with the town to see what kind of form this could be developed. And then you as a board we still have to have a conversation about if all of you show up. Okay, and if the town shows up and this board shows up, is this a joint meeting between the two boards, or is this if it's just an open meeting where you're there to gather information, then that means you basically go there and listen and not necessarily participate. So I do need to talk a little bit with our attorney and then talk a little bit with the town to see what kind of form would be.
I almost think that we would need to have like a couple hours where 2-2-1 go in and have a one-on-one or however we set it up.
Or it could be a joint meeting.
I'll be, I'm down with that.
In his original email, he mentioned that he had already talked to Swain and Macon County. So, I mean, they're all in this region together. If he's going to try to convince us, then shouldn't those other counties that's going to be affected also be included in the meeting? I don't know.
And then it's location and, there's so many variables that I just need more information.
Yeah.
To me, it felt like he had already talked to Macon and Swain, and they didn't want it there, so he's coming to us.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I hate to say it, we shouldn't be collectively gathering everyone from the community to house in our community. I don't know if that's the right way to look at it, but there's a lot that happens within those facilities, and we have to keep that in mind for safety and security of our
Jackson County or just Macon or
right.
whatever.
It's not a single county facility. It's
Buncombe's flooded, and they're if there's a bed available that they can send them to, they'll send them, and they'll take up all the beds.
So and
Regional, would that be Jackson, Macon, Swain?
well, the way these facilities work is you can't really limit it to certain counties. It could be, but what generally happens, just so you know, in these facilities is the closer ones tend to get access because they literally show up at the door with their client. Okay, and there's some rules based upon showing up at facilities about how that gets prioritized, and so that does tend to lean towards the region getting more access. Plus, it's a smaller transport or less distance for transport and so forth. But then the reality there's no guarantee that it's that Jackson County accesses, and so
Also, be somebody comes in from 8 counties away. You come in, they knock on the door. You can't deny them.
right.
And when they're released, most of the time they're not providing transportation back to where they got them from. They're
Right.
released here, so then that puts additional stress on emergency services, police.
Yeah,
I mean,
So-
I agree.
that-
with
that's my feeling. That's just
I agree with the chairman. We need a lot more information first
Yeah.
before we
Yes.
think about this.
and so And what I'm trying to do is just be respectful to our elected representative, and
Absolutely.
there's some information that's been sent out, and then if it pleases the board, then what I'll do is follow up and Mr. Chairman, maybe involve you, because now this last email that I've received that apparently there's been some communication with the mayor himself. So what I would want to do is maybe try to just talk about how this information gathering session would be conducted.
Right.
Maybe that's what you call it.
And that's,
And just to be responsive to the emails that are coming from the representative, and then maybe attempt to try to get more information. That's what
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I like I'm on the same page as Commissioner Bryson, because I don't recall getting any emails on this subject except what may have been sent by the commissioners up here. So maybe, if Ms. Winchester could check and see, making sure that we're on that list, because I haven't not gotten anything either.
I think the original email was just from Mike, Representative Clampett.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, and whether or not he's doing it correctly or not, I mean, I've got a copy of it right here. I mean, it looks like all the elected officials, best I can tell, they try to get as many elected officials on this email chain as possible. So we'll make sure, if you want, we can have Angie just re-forward everything to everybody if you want to make sure you get
I mean,
it.
if we're gonna make a decision on it, we need to be
Yeah,
included,
you
right?
need to have the information.
I've got a lot of questions too to
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
somebody who's in the field, job creation, along with
Yeah.
Commissioner Smith's point. Can we, if we pick them up, if they're brought over from another county, can we take them back to that county?
who
Is
pays
there,
the cost for taking it back?
who pays that cost?
Yeah.
And who's gonna help line up occupation when they are discharged? What entity can, because we wanna take them all the way through rehabilitation and good, strong mental health, and provide them something. Those are some of the questions.
And so for me, those are all absolutely legitimate questions. For me, I have no concept of what facility. Again, this is just trying to be responsive to a chain of emails that's been going around, and maybe try to put from our end, organize a little bit more to how to gather more information. Maybe that's another way to state it.
Any additional questions from the board regarding the mental health facility?
So do we have a joint meeting with Silver? Is that to be
I think
determined?
we'll to be determined,
Okay.
and we'll get you guys the emails.
It's just not mental health, it's substance.
Substance
Substance
abuse
abuse
as
as
well.
well, which is, I think is the larger problem.
Right.
If I remember, one of our speakers, the statistic is correct, 70% of the inmates that we have in Jackson County Jail have both abuse, alcohol and/or drug abuse, and mental health issues.
Yeah.
That's 70%.
Sad.
We can work on that.
With that, we have need to go into closed session today for minutes and personnel.
Personnel only.
Okay, personnel.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one other item. I apologize for not putting it on the agenda. It's literally just popped up in the last day or two. If you wish to delay it, and delay it, it doesn't bother me. We did have one new position that was, we had multiple new positions in this budget that this board approved. One of them was, oh, dang it, I have it in front of me. It was in regards to animal control. And so the position was an animal control staff, so it wasn't an animal control officer. It was basically an animal control attendant position. And so if you recall, there were multiple positions that were requested, but one was recommended and awarded or approved by this board. And so just so you know, an attendant basically just attends to the animals in the facility. An officer actually goes out and goes out on calls when there are issues. And so because there were less positions approved, it's being requested that we reconsider that position from an attendant to an officer. And just so you know, they both start, it's an officer training, they both start at the same grade. The only difference is the officer, after a year's worth of training, goes up in grade. So there's literally for this fiscal year, there's no grade change. There's no cost difference between an animal control attendant and an animal control officer. The only cost difference there'll be is when that officer gets trained after a year, then they would move up a grade. That's a career path already established. It's not anything new. And so what's being requested is that they have vacancies right now, animal control officers. They're fixing to advertise, and they're going to advertise that irrelevant of what's decided here because there's already a vacant position. They're just asking that new position be reclassified as an animal control officer versus an attendant. If it doesn't, then they would advertise the attendant position. But ultimately, they're just trying to get more officers. Yeah.
After a year of training and he's promoted, does that leave the attendant position open again?
Well, there's no attendant. It's
Right.
just the animal control officers actually. There's really the attendant was new position. I mean, a new.
But you're still gonna need an attendant if.
But we have administrative people. What I'm saying is there's never been an attendant position before.
Right.
Okay. And so the reality is what they initially thought is they would try to just have people that were just going to stay there and clean cages. But yes, maybe next year, that kind of goes back to after we operate for 3 to 6 months. If you recall, when I presented the budget to you, that when we find any additional needs, that I may have to bring that back to you as a board. And I believe I mentioned that at the beginning when I presented the budget to you. But for right now, just for moving forward with advertising for positions, if they're allowed to reclassify, and it's really not classified, this is for all the employees watching this. It's not changing the grade of the position itself. It's basically renaming it from an attendant to an animal control officer training. And what it does do is it allows for that trainee to become an animal control officer in a year. And that's what's being asked, to reclassify or to change that new position from an attendee to an animal control officer.
Is there any additional cost involved with training? Do we pay for that training?
Yeah, but we have it. It's all within budget. So it's so there's literally no change in grade or advertising. There's no change in financing. It's just when they bring the person in, they say in a year you're gonna follow this career path.
Okay.
Are we short-handed with animal control?
Big time.
Okay, I have received 2 calls this past week.
Yes, sir.
One is they called on the weekend about a dog that they caught, no collar. Nobody returned their call, and they even went to the emergency line.
Mhm.
Nobody returned their call or showed up. Second, I'm glad you brought this up too. The second was somebody, I'm not gonna bring any names up, kid got bit.
Yeah.
And nobody showed up to the scene for that.
So
I'm just gonna see, are we short-handed?
what there's a series of things that happen there that I think it would be more appropriate to discuss outside of this meeting, but that has been handled.
And didn't the director recently retire,
Yes.
Mr. Tyson?
Mr. Tyson just recently retired. Obviously being shorthanded in the transition, they are dealing with multiple issues, and so that is an issue that was brought up to multiple board members' attention, and that is being handled. Yes, sir.
The main thing is weekends. Are there somebody working weekends? This is the first call.
Well, there are different levels of response on weekends, just so you know. And so I'd rather. Now, what I'm about to say is what's supposed to happen. Now, this isn't about what happened in this situation, okay? But right now, there's a dog roaming free. At 2:00 in the morning on Saturday night, there's not a response. We're coming back. We're going to go and handle that situation on a Monday. And we also don't have staff currently right now that just sits in the truck and rides around picking up. That's not how, we don't have nearly enough staff to do that. So the way it's supposed to work. Now, again, we just had a situation that we've dealt with and we're dealing with right now. But the way it's supposed to work is depending on the level of call dictates where there should be immediate response. Obviously, things like rabies, bites, things of that nature should require the immediate response. Dangerous dogs, things of that nature. Now, when we're talking about stray animals and things of that nature, then ultimately it's not standard protocol to go out in the middle of the night. We generally try to do those during regular business hours so we don't accumulate comp time, overtime, things of that nature. And so all of this conversation, I've had direct conversations with Shelley Clearway, our health director, and then her supervisor over environmental health, and that they're working on this now. They need to go through a whole refresher training with the personnel there because the former director is retired. We got a new director in there, some brand new employees in there, and they just need to follow up and get the training everybody needs to move forward.
I'd like to elaborate on what Todd said about being slow to get back with. I mean, this kid was bit almost 10 days ago, and nobody has got back to that family to find out if this dog's rabid or not. They were told they got like 10 days to find out if the dog's rabid. If not, it's got to go get tests for it. And from what I've heard, that's not very fun.
Right.
Those
And
shots are.
what I want to know is why these people haven't got an answer in 10 days.
Yeah.
Tell you what, if it was your kid or your kid or your kid, you'd be madder than hell right now.
Yeah.
My kid,
Madder than hell
I'd be
that you haven't got an answer from this county. And it's embarrassing. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you, Tom.
I agree 100% on that.
I'm going up there after this meeting and I'm gonna go see that kid. And I'm gonna go see if that dog runs out at me. Because it's 2 houses down from there. And the guy had already called once and made a complaint because he's got small children. People also have a pit bull. Okay? I've had pit bulls. It's all in how you raise them. But they can flip on a dime and they will crunch a kid's head to nothing. Okay?
I mean-
and that's the last thing that we need is a kid getting killed because our animal control didn't come
That's
and
right.
do something about it.
That's exactly right.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Whether it be midnight, 2 a.m. or not.
3 o'clock in the afternoon.
That's
it
right.
don't matter. But I told them this morning to go up and get that dog. So I'm gonna go up and check. If that dog ain't gone, then I'm gonna make some phone calls. And if we need to hire a grade 20 man that's been in animal control for 20 years, let's do it. Hire somebody he can train too, along with it. We need people in that department.
So,
And don't nickel and dime. Let's get it done.
so I don't
Like I
disagree.
said, if
I
it was
don't.
your kid or anybody, one of our kids, we'd be wanting to know what the hell's going on. I know I would. And nothing's been done. The poor man's been sitting up there for 10 days. What do I do? That's
And the dog's,
embarrassing.
and the
It's
dog's still
embarrassing.
running loose.
And
Yeah.
the dog's still running loose.
It's embarrassing.
So
That's embarrassing.
like I say, this isn't. I'm not going to sit here. I found out about this yesterday. Followed through with it. Okay, basically got everybody's attention that needs to be attention. They are following through with it. All right, that's where I'm at with this right now. Now, when we start talking about when you go pet dogs and you start doing defining things of that nature, now that goes back to the ordinance, Commissioner Scribbling. Not. It goes back to whether or not. Let's say they did show up. Let's say immediately everything worked exactly the way it's supposed to. What I'm trying to tell you, the only way you can remove dogs, the only way you can do certain things is in accordance with our ordinances, okay? So when you start talking about dangerous dogs, okay, then ultimately there are definitions on what constitutes a dangerous dog, what level in just a single dog. Okay, I understand children are not under our current ordinance does not necessarily constitute a dangerous dog. All right, so I just want to tell you that because if you're going to drive up there and say if the dog is still sitting there, then ultimately, however the dog is dealt with has to be dealt with in accordance with our ordinances. That's all I'm trying to tell you. And if we need to change the ordinances, we need to change the ordinances. But the reality is you can't go take a dog unless you got the ordinance behind it to take the dog.
In my opinion, we need to look at changing the
Okay.
ordinance.
Ordinance, yeah. I think that's the first step. And that way staff is a little bit more clear in what needs to be done.
So we're currently, right now, the main thing, our existing staff needs to go, they need to be taken through the appropriate training about how to respond and appropriately respond to what occurred.
The ordinance needs to have more teeth. But we can take care of that.
And like Tom said, if they're not gonna do their job, we can find somebody that's gonna do the job.
With a new facility, you know, it might be time to take a step back and look at what changes we may want to talk about versus our existing facility. I don't have all that in front of me, so I can't really speak to that. But I've always hoped, with the monies that we've spent on the new facility, that some of the volunteer organizations, and they may have already stepped up to take over some, or volunteer towards some of those attendance requirements, needs. I just think that should be open for discussion. As far as switching the jobs, I'm comfortable, titles, I'm
Yeah,
comfortable
the
with
titles,
that.
I'm fine with
Yeah.
that. It's not gonna make a difference in terms of, I mean, whether somebody's sitting in an office or in a truck. I'd rather have them be able to get in a truck and go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, moving on to our closed session. Is there a motion to enter closed session today? And a second?
Second.
All in favor? The motion will be for us to go into General Statute 143-318-11A6 personnel for closed session. All those in favor? Opposed? None? action was taken in closed session today. There any additional, no additional topics to discuss? I'll have a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed?
Let's go.